Is hand drill something that has frustrated you time and time again? You might be completely new to it, or you might have gotten a couple of embers, but it just won't lock in for you. I'm hoping we can do this together and I can help you out and give you some tips and tricks from all the wonderful people that I've learned from over the years. Stick with me. Let's get some hand drill action going and hopefully get an ember today. Hey, how's it going? I'm the Bearded Burton, and if you're new here, welcome to the channel. I have been sitting on this video for well over a year now because I have not felt confident enough, I guess, to just share this stuff. But I realize none of us are perfect, and none of us can do everything perfect every time. And failure and showing failure and sharing failure is something that helps people a lot. It's helped me a lot. Today, I am wanting to share with you the majority of everything that I've learned about hand drill over the last at least 6 years, maybe 7 years. And I'm now at a point where I'm pretty consistent. It's still frustrating. It's one of the harder skills, but it's also one of those ones that's super rewarding because it's so minimalistic. It's really primitive. It really connects you to the land. And when you start understanding even how to harvest materials yourself off the land, it's a very connecting experience. We're not going to go over all that today. What I'm going to go over today is a lot of the things that helped get me over that hump. So what I'm not going to do is guarantee that everything's going to change for you. Just like with any skills, it takes practice, it takes time investing in it, and it a lot of times takes your own twist or spin or the thing that makes it click for you to work out. Someone can show you step by step how to do something, and not everyone's going to be able to repeat it. We're all different, we all learn different, and we all have different skill sets and skill levels that we're at or trying to get to. But what I want to do is share with you failures and share with you things that drastically changed it for me. Before we jump into it and we start spinning the spindle and trying to create some friction, I want to go over 3 things that you have to drill into your mind, that you have to keep in mind the whole time that you're working on this skill. It's one of the harder skills to learn and get a hold of. The first point that I want you to drill into your head, and one of the ones that lingered and was way more important for me than what I initially gave it credit for, is it's not always about the ember. I have this mindset when I start something that I want to see it to completion, that I want to see it all the way through and do the best that I can at it. I think that's a pretty natural thing for most of us. I think most of us that enjoy these kind of skills are driven by the passion and the excitement of it, and we want to create something. We want to have an end goal. We want to have something that we can show for. And the quicker that you can learn with friction fire in general, that it's not always about getting that ember because we're practicing, the easier that it's going to make it on you. Now, all that goes out the window if you're in a really bad situation and you're actually doing this to get a fire to keep you warm for the night. If that's the case, a lot of things have happened leading up to that you failed at, sadly, because you're relying on friction fire. But for this exercise, practicing this, something that you can do in your backyard, out here in the woods, on the weekends, keep in mind, you don't always have to get an ember, especially with hand drill. I'll say especially with hand drill because it's something that you're building up resistance to, you're building up calluses and stamina with. The mechanical advantage in hand drill is these things right here. And it's your upper body strength, it's your weight, your stamina. There is no mechanical advantage of a bow drill that you get. So it takes time to build this up. The second point that I want you to keep in mind is patience. It goes hand in hand with the first point, but patience with this is what I lacked in the beginning, and it's ultimately what caused me to take a pretty long hiatus and break from this. I got my first hand drill ember, ironically, before I got my first bow drill ember back in 2013. at an event. I had an excellent teacher. The materials were perfect. There was no humidity in the air. All these things lined up, and it gave me this false sense of confidence because I never truly learned the skill. I didn't invest the time and give the patience that it takes of the ups and downs and thinking you've got it, and then there's a slump, all those things. So keep in mind, patience is super important. And the third point, and just as critical, is your material selection. Unlike bow drill, you can't cut corners with your materials when it comes to hand drill. I say that loosely because there are people that I know that could dunk this whole set in the water right now and let it soak and probably still get an ember. It would take longer, but they could do it. There are different tips and tricks and things that we could go over later at some point, but for the most part, your material selection with hand drill, it needs to be the best that you could find, especially when you're first learning it, because that's going to give you that edge, and it's going to give you your best chances of stacking the odds in your favor, because we don't want to just fail and fail and fail and fail, because then we get discouraged, then we lose patience, and then this whole thing's a bust. Been there, I've done that. It's not fun, but if you don't have the materials needed in your area, reach out to someone and acquire them. There's no shame in getting a set or a kit from someone who has better materials in their area than what you do, because to me, it's more important to learn this skill first and understand it and get a good familiar grip on it, and then start trying to go out here off the land and recreate it yourself. So those three things are things I want you to keep in mind as we go through this. 1, it's not always about the ember. 2, have all the patience you can with this. 3, get the best materials that you can find to set yourself up for success. Okay, let's do a quick discussion over resource selection. In my area, I'm in Texas, North Texas area. Yucca is king. Yucca on yucca is the best that I can find here that I enjoy. The people that I've learned from this area, my really good friend Philip at Primitive Wilderness Survival, he is by far head and shoulders above me with this skill. He prefers yucca on yucca. Next, I would say if you can find sodal or sotal, it's really good. It's a little softer than yucca. And then we can start breaking up into different combinations. Just like with bow drill, different spindles and different boards will work and whatever. I don't want you to get hung up on certain things that you have to have, because just like with gear, it's more important to learn the skill than to have $1 million worth of gear and not know how to use any of it. But I will say in my area, yucca on yucca is really good. Horseweed makes really good spindles. If you can find it, frostweed makes really good spindles. Sunflower stalk. Mullein is a step below those that I just mentioned, in my opinion. And then honestly, if you would use a board for bow drill, let's say cottonwood root, willow root, any of those roots of those softwood trees are gonna be better. For some reason, the roots of those trees work really well. Honestly, the roots of a lot of trees work really well, but your softer woods that you would use for friction fire by itself are fine for board materials. You wanna make sure that your set is bone dry. There's a lot of humidity in the air. I have moisture even on my skin, not just from me sweating, but it is very damp and humid. I'm already thinking it's going to be difficult to get this today. Let's talk about a few things when it comes to your technique. Being able to film yourself do hand drill and go back and watch yourself is huge. I filmed myself early on trying, or I would have little clips on Instagram, like short videos, and it wasn't until my buddy Philip, once again, was go back and watch yourself, dude. And I saw a lot of the things that he was pointing out as he was watching me attempt it at multiple classes that really helped me now that I'm able to pick it apart. So folks that that know this skill and are really good at this skill, like my buddy Philip, my buddy Travis Henry, Rocky, Caleb at Bushwalker Outdoors, Shane Lindbergh, my mentor Dave Holliday, they have all these things that they've figured out that I'm trying to share with you, and I hope it really helps. But the techniques are where this is like the make or break failure for most people. So the first one that I want to go over that I see a lot when folks are showing practicing hand drill, and I did this early on, was not taking full advantage of essentially the revolutions per minute on this spindle. So when you have a fatter spindle, like with bow drill, you have to use a bow that's long enough that turns that spindle enough times on itself before you have to pull it back and it unwinds via the string, mechanical advantage. The more times that you can get this to rotate without it stopping, the more friction builds up, the more heat, aka gives you more chances to get an ember. So if you're short stroking this and you're just going your fingertips to these pads on your palm, you're barely getting a full revolution on your spindle. But if you can increase this and roll it all the way back, you're getting a lot more purchase and a lot more bang for your buck. So the thing that you'll find, especially once you get started doing this, after your first 2 or 3 passes, you'll start short stroking it. And I see it all the time. And instead of just doing full long strokes all the way down, people will start short stroking it. And that's literally causing a lot of heat and friction and chaos right there in the section of your palm. And that's where people have a lot of problems, where they get blisters and hot spots and all that. We'll talk about a way to alleviate that or to help it in a moment. But that's one thing that I see a lot of people do, is not going all the way. And I'll give better examples of this as I'm talking, but not going all the way from fingertip to palm, back of palm, back of palm, back of palm, because you get worked up and you're just going right here and staying in that spot, and it's burning the crap out of your hands. The second thing that I see a lot is whatever hand people are dominant, that's usually the hand that they move the most. My buddy Philip's the one who really preaches this when he's teaching hand drill. If you watch people, you'll see that this elbow, watch the elbows when they're doing hand drill, and you'll see that one elbow's moving and the other one's kind of staying still. You need to be moving both hands. Both arms should be working so that you're not just blowing one out and you're essentially just rubbing one against the other one. You'll see yourself, especially on camera, one hand being kind of stationary, and you're essentially just rolling the spindle across that hand because you're not moving both all the way. The next thing that you'll see that gives a lot of problems is where you're generating the downward force. So this only works because there is pressure pressing into this spindle, from this spindle into this board. With bow drill, we have that mechanical advantage where we can rest the handhold against our leg and lean on it, or press down on it, hopefully for not too long, but we can lean on it, and that is giving the downward pressure needed to create friction down here. It's not impossible to sit here and just spin this without a lot of pressure and build up dust. It's gonna take a long time, and you'll probably blow your hands out or get tired before. So when you can figure out how to generate the downward pressure, along with going fingertip to palm, back of palm, you're gonna be having a lot better chance at this succeeding. That's where the trouble lies for a lot of people, including myself. So this is where different techniques and different postures that we can create will allow us to get away with that. So if you don't have the upper body strength, especially in your shoulders and in your chest, to press against this spindle and push down, it becomes quite difficult for you. And a way to get over that is to distance yourself from the board. So what I mean by distance yourself from the board is, instead of you putting your foot right on the board and whatever way that you want to manipulate the spindle, we'll go over that too, you can distance yourself and use something that holds the board down. Like, put a stick across the board and put your knee on this stick that holds the board down, and you now have this board out in front of you, and you can lean on it and really put your body weight on the spindle. And I'll show you the difference between the two. It's almost immediate, and it makes a lot of difference doing that. Here comes the mid-video curveball. This is something that I passionately feel that not near enough people share, promote, encourage, whatever you want to say, is assisted hand drill. Any of the spindles that you find, so horseweed, mullen, and then this is just a dowel rod that I made. So this was a flat piece of wood. I started carving feather sticks off of it. It's a piece of poplar from Home Depot. I started carving feather sticks on it, and I ended up carving out my own round spindle. Any of these can be manipulated with some cordage. So here's a hack. I'm not a huge fan on taking shortcuts and all that, but for this, it just makes sense. The biggest obstacle that people face in the beginning of hand drill is their hands aren't tough enough, calloused enough. They're just not used to this really unique skill that takes unique muscles and parts of your hands to manipulate the spindle for long enough to create an ember. And you can build up that strength. So just like working out or wanting to get bigger muscles, you've got to go and be consistent. You've got to keep building upon, and breaking those muscles down, and then eating the right things and repairing them. The first 4 years of me trying hand drill and practicing it, I had no idea about this. And my buddy Logan showed me this technique, and then I kind of started seeing it everywhere. It's like one of those things that once your eyes are open to it, you see a lot of other people doing it. But the idea is you knock the top of your spindle. So this one I've already done, but you could do it to any of these that you find. You put a small knock in there and you wrap it. So wrap your spindle and then start carving out a knock so that it doesn't split and continue to run down it. And what you're doing is you're giving yourself, just like with the bow and arrow string, you're giving yourself a place for a string to go. And why this is so important, and why I think this isn't preached enough and shown enough, is this is literally a way to understand what it takes to manipulate the spindle, the downward pressure it takes to manipulate the spindle, and all the while it's building up the toughness in your hand and the calluses in your hand to be able to rip this off every day. And it's pretty simple. You can see what I'm doing here. You take a string, it can be bank line, paracord, that you take the inner strands out of paracord and just use that outer casing. Works really well because it'll get a little softer. But you essentially, I'll show you in a second, but you'll have loops in this, you tie loops in this, and this way, when you pull down on this string with your hands, it's putting pressure down here at the end of the spindle. And then all you have to do is rotate this spindle. I see nothing wrong with breaking down a skill into segments like that. Understanding what it's going to take to generate enough downward pressure to generate enough time of spinning this in your hand before they get tired. Those are all things that you learn either the hard way, or you can use something like assisted hand drill by putting a knock in the top of your spindle and getting that built up, getting those skills built up and understanding those techniques before you jump right in. There's no right or wrong way to do either one. But that's something that would have severely helped me in the beginning, was understanding that assisted hand drill is an option, and it still allows me to learn the skill. And as a side note, for the purists out there that are going to, you know, maybe have a snarky remark or whatever about using cordage on a hand drill, like, wow, you might as well do a bow drill. Well, you could, but you don't think our ancestors or the Native Americans carried cordage with them. Cordage is just as important as fire, cutting tools, containers. All those things are things that we've used and relied on this as a civilization to make it this far. And a lot of us have cordage on us. We're either carrying some form of modern cordage, or for the purists that aren't a fan of it, you can completely do assisted hand drill off the land, all natural, with yucca cordage or whatever kind of, you know, dog vane, any of the cordage that you're used to making for other projects, you can do it for this too. So you're still doing everything off the land. You're still doing that primitive connection with, you know, learning a skill that might be new to you or might be hard. So that's an option. I am a huge fan of assisted hand drill. Any of the times that I teach hand drill to people, especially ones that are brand new, we're doing assisted hand drill. That is a huge confidence booster to someone brand new to such a difficult skill. Okay, so just like with bow drill, friction fire, you want to make sure you have a spot that's pretty level and that's kind of free of debris and whatnot. I'm going to actually use this little sit pad here to keep all my stuff dry and up off the ground. And then I'm going to be using the spindle that I made. This is actually what's called a parasite plug, where you can take wood that may not be good for hand drill and then put a plug on it and just use a small section that might be crooked or whatever to plug into the end of it and still get, you know, enough material there on a soft material to create friction. So earlier I talked about getting your board out in front of you. Instead of just putting it right here and putting your foot on it and spinning away, getting it out in front of you and being able to lean on the board is really going to help you. So as you can see here, the board is further out in front of me, and I can place a stick on the board and use my knee to hold this down, and it won't move. And now, instead of using my foot, I can put it out in front of me and I can lean on this as I go down. I'm using my body weight to lean down onto it instead of just trying to push it down if I were to be doing like this. So we can go over a few different ways of the technique of how to set this up. One being just kind of the way that you would do bow drill, where you step on this and you can either go your arm outside of your knee or your arm inside of your knee and kind of turn. And this kind of gives you the best of both worlds. You can still lean on this spindle and still get full range of motion. But if you do this, you have a chance of rubbing against your knee unless you kind of lean it back. So I will usually go like this and then go fingertip to palm, okay? I'm not going to discuss the technique of floating, where you just stay at the top of your spindle and never go down. People are way better at it than what I am. I genuinely do it to heat up my board. Kind of like when you're doing bow drill, you don't just immediately go for broke. You start off nice and easy, nice and slow. You allow these materials to kind of marry up, heat up, and then when you start seeing smoke, you're adding a little bit more pressure. So I'm not gonna go over that floating hand drill technique in this video. I'm able to kind of do it. There's people that are way better at it than I am, but for the most part, finding out which one works best for you, going inside if you're able to. People that have issues with hips or their back, let's go over that. So if you have an issue with your hips or lower back or your knees and you're not able to get into this kind of position, I really do recommend trying the stick and placing it underneath your board and it not allowing your board to move. The other one that you see a lot of people do you'll see a lot of people that sit down and they either throw their foot over it and just kind of do this, or they'll step on it, all that kind of stuff. This is the thing that I try to discourage, especially people that are new to this skill, from the most, because you're literally only generating downward pressure with your upper body. You don't have anything really to lean on. You're already kind of hunched over and you're having maybe some trouble breathing when you get going. This is definitely more of an advanced position in my opinion. So something else that you'll see as well is, look at these two different techniques and you'll see the difference. I'm at the bottom. See how many more spins I got out of my spindle? Your goal is to slowly creep down this spindle as you're going fingertip to palm. Something that you'll notice yourself doing while you film yourself doing this is, in the beginning, you'll be doing everything as correctly as you can. You'll be going fingertip to palm, slowly working your way down the spindle. And then as you start getting more tired, you'll start cheating it. And then you'll not only be moving down the spindle a lot quicker, it gets sloppy and things start doing this. You won't be going fingertip to palm anymore, and you also won't be rotating both elbows forward instead of just rotating one against the other. That's why it's so important for us to film ourselves doing something that we really want to grasp and learn how to get done. All right, so I've done a lot of talking. I want to show you how I do an assisted hand drill, and we can just try to get an ember out of it, and then we'll do a regular hand drill. All right, I have my long stick holding down my board, my coal catch underneath, and we're just gonna go for it. Watch how quick we can get smoke using this technique. We have a little ember. Oh, it just went out. But you can see how dark this dust is. Okay. Here's the components. So there's the hole. Here's my loop string. Here's the spindle. So it's just a knock at the top and it's wrapped. And then, like I said, I have what's called a parasite plug. This is just a piece of river cane that I hollowed out, wrapped on each end so it won't split. And then you can just pop in whatever plug of material that you want in the bottom of it. So this is just a piece of horseweed from a spindle, a stock that was like super crooked, but I can just trim it and pop it in there. All right, now let's go over just your normal hand drill spindle and a board. We're gonna be using a Genesis, and essentially what I want to do is I want to have my spindle be closer to the edge of the board than what I would my bow drill, because it's going to be a smaller ember, and my pie hole or my pie cut is also not going to be as big. So I'm going to do this real quick, and then I'll show you an up close look at what it looks like once I'm done. So this is what we came up with. Okay, let's give it a shot. One thing that you can do that's also a trick that my buddy Philip taught me is when you start doing this, if you're not hearing that grinding sound or that friction sound of scraping against each other and it's just kind of glossing over, take a little bit of sand or just any kind of fine grit and sprinkle it into your divot, and it'll give you that extra that you need. So I'm just going to start off up here at the top of the spindle, just warming it up. And then I'm going to burn it in. All right, it's burnt in. This is what it looks like when it's burnt in. Now we're going to cut our divot. So here's the divot cut out, or the pie crust, what do you want to call it? Let's see if we can get an ember. So I'm gonna get my board down nice and flat. I kind of angle my board. I don't have it straight across because I'm gonna be angled into it anyways. Let's get this in here and let's warm it up. It sounds good. And here comes an airplane. I'm just gonna let it roll. It's heated up and I've actually created some dust. Once again, I forgot my cold catch. So if you notice, like I said, I'm not concerned about the ember today. But if you notice, when I do this and I get to where I feel like it's getting kind of wobbly up here at the top, I'll pinch this with my finger and put my thumb on the top. See? That way it doesn't go everywhere. Getting a little crazy there. We should have an ember. Teeny baby one. It's snuffed out. It's really humid today, but as you can see, here's what your dust looks like. And I'll show you the set. So I rocked it a little forward. You can see on the board that I rocked it forward. See how it's scooped out? But again, it's practice. Look at my hands. They'll hurt. Woo. So to recap, because I didn't get an ember, it's not a failure. I got better. My hands got tougher. I stayed patient. And I worked on something new. That's the big thing. You don't always have to have that Instagram shot, YouTube perfect video ending to your stuff. I am covered in sweat right now. I've been out here for 3 hours. It's humid. I've been out in the woods. It's awesome. This is what it's about. It's not about doing everything right and looking cool. It's about practicing. The 3 points, it's not always about the ember. I'm fine today with not getting an ember. The conditions are really tough right now, and I'm tired. I'm not hydrated enough, I'll admit that. Second point, patience. I kept my patience today. I didn't let any of that frustrate me. I tried probably 3 or 4 more times off camera, and I never got one. So I'm fine with that. I can accept that. And the third is I used the best materials that I could to stack the odds in my favor. So recap techniques and skills. Remember, fingertip to palm, the most rotations you can get out of the spindle. Work your way down the spindle as slowly as you can. Use both arms. Elbows should be moving. If you need to, sprinkle a little grit into your divot hole to add some friction to it if it's glossing over. If you're brand new to this and you've never tried it before, there's no shame in using the thumb loops on assisted hand drill by knocking the top of the spindle after you've wrapped it so it won't split, and using those thumb loops to give you the pressure you need. Your hands can just push down on the spindle and you can focus on getting this technique and moving your elbows. If your hip or your back or your knees don't allow you to put the board down like a bow drill and go in between your legs on the outside of your knee, you can use the stick and put it under your knee pad and it'll press down onto the board. There's a lot of different little things that we've gone over today and shared that I never knew, at least the first 2 or 3 years of me trying this all the time. So last one I'm gonna give you a freebie is when your hands start to hurt, clap them together and it'll get that blood rushing through there. It'll kind of shock them and it might give you one or two more attempts at getting an ember. I hope you enjoyed this today. Remember, as long as you're trying, it's not a failure. Just learn from it and get better. We're better today than what we were yesterday. And do this, get outside, enjoy the woods. It's beautiful. Thanks for watching.